Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked, the series where I talk about every single book on my shelf because apparently I'm a masochist and I hate free time. Today we're going to be talking about the Iskari series, sort of. Despite having owned at one point or another every single book in this trilogy, I have only hung on to the first one, The Last Namsara. So we're going to focus in on this book in this review, and I will briefly go into why I think you should read this book and pretend that the other books in this series do not exist. Some quick disclaimers before we start. This is the Fairy Loot edition of The Last Namsara, which I paid for with my hard-earned money. I believe I did have review copies of possibly this and definitely the other two books in the series, whether that be digitally or physically. Regardless, all opinions are my own and nobody is paying me to talk about books, because if they were, I don't think they would appreciate this video. I'm also going to keep things as spoiler-free as I can. I'm going to go into the second and third book a little bit, but it will be spoiler-free. If you want to go in knowing absolutely nothing about these books, including my opinions of the rest of the series, please do click away now. The Iskari series was first published in the UK in 2017. I have a vague feeling that they were self-published first, but a quick Google revealed none of that to me, so either they're scrubbing that history or I made that up. The author, Kristen, and I've never managed to say her name right because I've never heard it out loud, but I think it's Ciccarelli, would be my Ciccarelli. Ciccarelli would be how I would pronounce it, but it could also be Ciccarelli. But that doesn't feel right. It's got to be Ciccarelli. Kristen Ciccarelli, I believe is how you pronounce her name, is an American author. She primarily writes YA fantasy books. Before being an author, she was an artisanal baker, an indie bookseller, a ceramic artist, a woman of many talents. The Last Namsara, because I want to stay focused in on book one, follows Asha, the daughter of the king. After surviving a terrible dragon attack as a child, she's become one of the fiercest dragon hunters in the land. But at the start of the book, she returns home from a hunt, only to be told by her father that he's marrying her off to a man who seems, well, kind of terrible. With the help of a slave boy who's come along with her future husband, Asha starts to unravel the secrets at the heart of her household. It's YA fantasy, with some dragons and a lot of romance. What I will say is that the second and third books in this series feature other characters who have featured in this book, but they become the main characters, and then the characters from previous books are mentioned where necessary, so they're kind of three almost standalone or companion books. I think there are some cool ideas in this book. This is a very standard YA fantasy, which will either be a selling point or a no-go, depending on your preference, but I do think there are elements to the world building that really captivated me in this book. I'm really in love with the idea that comes about in this book where dragons are kind of lured and attracted by old stories, and as such, storytelling is banned, and I bet you can guess what Asha does some of. But yeah, this idea of kind of like effectively holding out a treat for a dragon would be promising to tell it a really cool story. It's just an interesting idea. Unfortunately, that idea does kind of fall off the map in later books. We get much fewer dragons, but in this book we do get to enjoy these kind of like bookish dragons. I also think that the plot of this book has some really cool moments. I have a really distinct memory of reading this for the first time, and I was like lying down in the sofa in an old flat and I gasped out loud when something happened, and I very rarely make any kind of audible anything when I'm reading a book unless it's a light sniffle because I'm reading Becky Chambers. It was just one of those moments where everything made sense but was also so shocking that everything had kind of turned around in my head. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil for you what that was, because that would make me a dick, but what I will say is this book hits hard in some of those shock-based feelings. There's a really sweet romance in this book. I will say it takes up a fair amount of the plot without overpowering some of the more important things going on. You know how sometimes in YA you can be sat there like, do we really need to be kissing now? The world is about to end, kind of thing. It's not like that. It's one of the few cases where I think there's a better romance in the later books, but that might just be because that's a sapphic romance and I'm biased. If you're here for a slightly tropey romance plotline, this one will do it for you. So yeah, there's some really cool, exciting stuff happening in this book. I think it's well written. I think the characters are great. Asha's a really interesting character. She has that cool YA arc of learning about how her world wasn't exactly how she expected, which I always enjoy. But basically my main con is that you cannot continue with this series, or you can. It's just very disappointing. So I read Last Namsara when it first came out, and then I had a review copy of, I can't even remember what it's called now, The Caged Queen? Yes, The Caged Queen. I read that and I kind of went, well, okay, reasonably all right. Put it on my shelf, didn't love it as much as The Last Namsara. And then I had a review copy of Skyweaver and I read it and I went, what happened here? Well, this was no good at all. I reread Caged Queen. this was no good at all. I thought maybe 2017 Judith just had no taste. Maybe she was just young and naive and would quite happily read whatever. So I reread The Last Namsara, and it's really good. It's still really good. I have absolutely no idea what happened in book 2 and 3 to just make it all go downhill. And it may be the lack of dragons. That just may be it. The other two books I think are kind of boring, a little bit confusing, and involve a lot of everyone. Maybe not everyone's least favourite thing, certainly my least favourite thing, of characters who could solve all their problems by just talking to one another, who choose not to do so. I don't know how much it's a con, because I firmly believe you can just read this book, think of an ending for yourself for the series, which is totally fine to do, and just continue with your life living happily. But I can warn you that you shouldn't go into this thinking, oh great, I've got a whole new trilogy to read, that's gonna be fan-dabby-tastic, because it's just not. It's just not, I'm sorry, I don't want to disappoint you. It's also very YA fantasy of its time, but I've said before, if you know you don't like that, you know you don't like that. You're all good. Some comparisons, some other things you might want to read. I thought for dragons and this kind of bookish dragon kind of thing, Seraphina by Rachel Hartman is one of my favourites. Dragons love logic, dragons love maths. Yes, very, very into it. If you like the kind of story where a person has to reevaluate their entire worldview and their life because of various lies they've been told, I think The Sin Eater's Daughter by Melinda Salisbury, that's a really great trilogy from start to finish as well. No dragons in that one though. And finally, it's been in this Overbooked series, Raw by Cora Carmack, if you really like YA romance and if you like this kind of I'm escaping a bad husband and going off with a nice person, that kind of thing, Raw might be for you. Should you read this? I'm a little bit conflicted because on the one hand, I actually firmly believe that in this particular instance, you can read this book on its own and have a really good time because it's a great story. I can't say I was eager to read the other two after I'd read this one. I was just kind of happy with it. But also, should I be recommending you a book where I know the other two books in the series aren't good? Because you might be tempted and then you'll be disappointed and then you might be angry with me. I guess I'm just going to say you have all the information I can give you. Do with it what you will. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was interesting. Could you comment below with other books where you think the series really tailed off after a particular book? Because I'm interested in what other series are out there that this kind of happens on, because I don't find it happens very often for me. While you're down there commenting, you can follow me on all of my social media. That's all linked below. You can subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. Today, we will be talking about the, I'm always gonna get this wrong, Iskari. I've just written in my notes, please fact check. Like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just filming the video. Should you read this? I'm dropping my phone on the floor. Diddly-dee. Put my phone in my pocket 'cause I don't need it anymore.